identity. Each object should have its own identity. It should be unique in nature. That is the identity. The self parameter does not call it to the self. You can use any other name instead of the self. Here we change the self into the word sometimes, and the output will be given as same. Its definition has only one argument, which is referring to the instance being constructed. Only defaultly it will take self as an argument. Hello everyone, welcome you to the session on Python programming for 4th semester B.Ca student. In this session we are going to discuss object-oriented programming with respect to Python programming language in Unit 3. Myself, Init J, Faculty of Computer Science Department, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Hope all of you are aware what is object-oriented concept. What are the concept that falls under object-oriented? Why it is so important? Using object-oriented concept, we can relate the real-world problem into the computer simulation. That's why object-oriented concepts are very important. Right? What is the main concepts of object-oriented? As all of you know, you have studied in C++ as also in the Java. What are the concepts of object-oriented? Class, object, inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and data abstraction. This is a basic concept of object-oriented programming. If any language want to implement the object-oriented programming, it has to support all these concepts. So let us see how the Python programming language supports object, classes, inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulations. Let's start today's session with the classes. Right, what is class? As all of you know, class is a blueprint to create any object. Right, for example, if you want to create a pen. Pen is an object. So what all the features the pen have? Pen should have a specified length, specified width, and the function of the pen is to be write. So you want to create n number of pens. For creating n number of pens, you cannot keep on creating attributes and the functions for each individual object. So what exactly we do here, we create one blueprint called as a class, where it have all the basic attributes and then the functions of that particular object. What are the attributes of the object pen? Pen has a object color, size, length, and width. These are all the attributes. And what is the function of the pen? Function of the pen is to write. So these all will be created and kept in a blueprint. And we use an object. Whenever we creating the object, we can make use of these attributes and then the function in spite of creating attributes and the function for each individual object. That is the concept of class. Let us go with the formal definition for the class. In object-oriented programming, a class is a blueprint or template for creating the object, as just we have explained, right? It defines the common attribute. What is defining? Attributes. What are the properties of the objects? And behavior. Behavior is nothing but the function of the object. It defines what? Common attribute and then the functions or the behavior that object of that particular class should have, right? The class creates a user-defined data structure. Class creates what? Data structure which holds the own data, its own data, members, and then the member functions. It has its own data which in terms of attributes we are giving, which has its own function which is in terms of methods what we are giving. So this is a formal definition what we have for the class. Let us see how to create the class in a Python programming language. What is the syntax of creating the class? Syntax of the creating class, first it should start with the keyword class, right? Followed by class name. Just I have took the example of the pen. How do I create? Class, keyword, followed by class name, pen. right? So after that, within that, what is the attributes I have given? Color, attribute 1 is color, attribute 2 is equal to size, and we can define function called write. So how do I define? Def write function with self. Right, this is how we are going to create the class. Class with the class name. Within that, we should have a statement. What all the statement should consist of? Attributes and the functions of that particular class. Okay, some points on Python, creating a Python classes is that classes are created by using a keyword class. So make a note in that this is not the capital C, this is a small c. You should use as it is, because keywords are case sensitive. How it is declared, you should use in the same way. The attributes and the behavior that belongs to the class. What all the attributes and that behavior belongs to the class? Color and the size of the attribute, and the write is a behavior that belongs to the class pen. The attributes are always public and can be accessed using the dot operator. How we are accessing, how object attributes are accessing? By using the dot operator, and always it will be the public. It is allowed to access by any object of the class that belongs to it. We don't have a private and protected in general. So my class dot attribute, how I am accessing the attribute? This is the object of the class, and with the dot operator and the name of the attribute we are supposed to give. Example, they have created one class called dog. In that class, what is the attribute we have? We have attribute as sound. How dog sounds? It will bark, right? So you can have a 2 example for classes. Next, what is the next concept? Important concept, object. Why we are using the classes? To create the object. Now what is object? Object is a real word instinct or real word entity which has an existence. That is called as object, where class does not have a real word existence. Okay, coming into the definition of the object. Object is an instant of class, right? How to define the object, how we are creating the object of that particular class? Syntax, object with the equals to assignment operator and then the class name. So if I create a ball object as ball pen for the previous, what is the class the ball pen belongs to? Belongs to the class pen, right? That's how we are supposed to create the objects. And print object dot attribute. This is where we are using the dot operator to access the attribute of the class. An object consists of 3 main things. What is that? State, behavior and identity. What is a state? What is the state of the object? State represent the attribute of an object. State represent what? Attributes of an object. For pen class, for ball pen, what all the attributes? It should have a color and it should have a size, right? So this is an attribute that the object possesses from the class. And behavior is what? What the behavior of the object is. What is the property of what a pen is used for? Pen is used for what? Writing function, right? So we are calling the write function. Object has what? State. State is nothing but the attribute of the object. Behavior. Behavior is nothing but the function of the object. And then identity. Each object should have its own identity. It should be unique in nature. That is the identity. It gives the unique name to an object and enables one object to interact with the other object of the same class. So this is about the object in the Python. Let us have an example. Here what we have created, one class called dog with the attributes. What all the attributes of the class is breed, age and color, which is a common attribute for any dog. Dog should have a breed, dog should have a age, and dog should have its own color, which is a common attribute. Then coming to the behavior, what is the behavior of the dog? It barks, it sleeps, and it will eat. These are all the behavior. So now we are creating how many objects? We are creating the 4 objects of the class dog. Dog 1, dog 2, dog 3, and dog 4. All 4 objects can be able to access the attributes and the behavior of the class dog. Okay. So what would be the output of this particular Python programming? We have created one class called dog. What is the class name? Class name is dog. Attribute 1 is a mammal. Dog is a mammal. Then attribute 2 is a dog. Then we have one function called function, def function, with the self parameter, where in the function the statements are given in the function is that print I am a self dot attribute 1 and I am a self dot attribute 2. So why we are using this self? To access the attribute of the class, we are using the self parameter. Okay, self dot attribute 1 and self dot attribute 2, what we are doing. And here we are creating one object. What is this? This is an object of class dog, right? So we are creating one object called Roger. Roger is a breed of the dog or whatever. So what I am doing, print Roger dot attribute 1. How I am accessing? I am accessing attribute 1 with the dot operator and the object name. Object name, dot operator, and the attribute what I am accessing for. So what it will give? Roger is a mammal, right? Attribute, then object dot function. We can access the methods also using the dot operator, object dot function name. So what it will give the output as? Output as I am a mammal and I am a dog. That will be given. So in the first printf statement, what will get? Roger dot attribute will get it as mammal. Yes, that is a first printf statement. In the second, when we are calling the function, it will call this function and it will print the whatever the print statement is there in that particular function. That I am self dot attribute is mammal, right? And I am self dot attribute 2 is dog. So that will be printed as an output. So this is how we are going to create a class object and accessing the attributes and the methods of the class using the objects. So objects of the Python class, in that we have one specified thing, the self parameter. When we are declaring or defining the function within the class, we use a self parameter. Why to use a self parameter? Self parameter is used to access the attribute of the class. We call a method if the object is my object dot method with the 2 parameter. This self will convert that automatically into my class dot method with the object and attributes value. So that's why we are using the self parameter. The self parameter does not call it to the self. You can use any other name instead of the self. Here we change the self into the word sometimes and the output will be given as same. Well, most of the time we use a self parameter because we are calling by itself. That's why we renamed it as spite of self. You can use a other word also. Next what we have is pass statement. What this pass statement is used for? Pass statement is used to skip the particular code. I don't want to execute the piece of the code, then we can use this pass statement. The program execution is unaffected by the pass statement in action. So that piece of the code will be skipped and the remaining code will be executed. So it mostly permits the program to skip, pass and the session of the code without doing anything. It does not throw on an error or it does not give you any exceptions if you do so also. That's why we are using the pass statement. It is frequently employed when the syntactic constraint of the Python demands a valid statement but not the useful code must be executed. Whenever we want to execute only the limited code, then that time we can use a pass statement. How to implement the pass? Class, my class, this is a class name. If I give pass here, it will skip whatever the content of that class and it will execute the remaining set of instructions. Coming to one more important method or the function in the object-oriented concept, that is init method. Why init method is used? The init method is similar to the constructor. What is it? It is a constructor in C++ and Java. What is constructor? Constructor will execute itself whenever the object is created. Okay. So, constructor are used to initialize the object state. Whenever object is created, constructor initialize those object. Like method, a constructor also contains a collection of statement. In this particular method, we can have a collection of statements here within this method. Okay, or the instruction that are executed at when the object is created. It runs as soon as the object class is initialized. Whenever we say obj is equal to class, as soon as this statement comes, constructor will be executed. Okay. Next, simple class example with the init method. What we are doing? We are creating one class called person. What is a class name? Person is a class name. In that, what we are doing? We are defining or we are calling the constructor. We are calling the constructor using a init method. How many parameters? Self is a default parameter. And we are passing one parameter here. User defined parameter. Okay, so two parameters are there. This self is to access this user defined parameter. Within this we can have a statements, right? So self dot name is equal to name. We are allowed to give some name, right? Then it has one more function or the method called say hi. Say hi is a method that is there when we call the init function. So here also we have a default parameter called self. So what this function will be having? Function will print you one statement like hello, my name is. What is this self dot name? Self dot name will be accessed by the attribute of init function. Let's come to the object creation. When we are P is an object of which class? Of the class person. Whenever we are creating the object, meanwhile we are passing the value of the parameter name here. What is the name? Nikhil, right? So Nikhil will be passed as a parameter. When I call the function say hi, p dot say hi, where is my p dot say hi function? Whenever I call this function, it will print hello, my name is self dot name. What is the value for the name given? Nikhil. So it will print what? My name is Nikhil. So that will be the output for the given method or the function. Whenever init constructor will execute, it will execute as when we are creating the objects, right? Next, classes with the multiple object. We can create the multiple object of the single class. That is a main concept why we are creating the class, right? For every object we cannot keep on giving the attributes and then the functions. So we have to put it in a one blueprint that is called as class, and we are creating multiple object of the same class. The object oriented programming, you can create the multiple object instance of the same class. Each object represents a distinct instance with its own set of data and then the module. Whenever we are creating a objects, it can have its own parameters, own instance and data and then the behavior of that particular object. Here is an example for the Python class called as rectangle. with the multiple objects. Let us see one example. Understand this, creating more than one objects for the class with an example. What we are doing here, we are creating one class called rectangle. What is the class name? Class name is a rectangle. As we have already discussed, init function. What is init function? It is a constructor which is called with the default parameter and 2 parameter. When it is a rectangle, what all the properties or the attribute of the rectangle? It should have a height and it should have a width, right? So width and height are the parameters or the value attributes of that particular class. So how I can access that? Self dot width is equal to width, self dot height is equal to height. To access the attributes of the class, we are using this. Then this class has one function called area. We are supposed to calculate the area of the rectangle. So what we are doing, that has been passed with the default parameter called self. So what we are doing, what all the statements we have in that particular function or the method is return self dot width into self dot height. What we are returning, we are multiplying width into height, so that will give you the area, right? That will give you the area of rectangle. Now coming to object creation, we are creating more than one object of the class rectangle, right? So here we have a rectangle 1 as an object 1, this is object 2. Rectangle 1 is object 1 and rectangle 2 is a object 2. As we are using the constructor, we are passing the value of attribute directly. Here width is equal to 4 and height is equal to 5 for object 1, and for the object 2, width is equal to 3 and height is equal to 6. We are giving. Each object is different. It is identical, right, from each other, and it has a different value. So what it should be? The rectangle means width of the rectangle is 4 and the height of the rectangle is 5. So one object will be created like this, and width of the rectangle is 3 and height will be 6. One rectangle is created like this, right? So what would be the output? How we are accessing the attribute and the method of that particular class rectangle? What we are doing, rectangle 1 dot width. What I supposed to access? The first objects, only the attribute width I supposed to access, which is a 4, and the rectangle 1 dot height. The first object with the attribute height I am accessing, that is 5. Now here I am calling the function area, calling the method area. What that method will returns? That method will returns W into H. What is the value that will be returned? That is 4 into 5. The value 20 will be returned as an output. Similarly, we have done for the rectangle 2 object, width, height and then the area. What is the width? 3, height is a 6. 3 into 6 will give the return value as 18 as a result of the given instruction. So constructors in Python, we have already discussed about the constructor in Python. We'll discuss the different types of constructor in the Python. What is a constructor? Constructor are generally used for initializing the object, right? The task of the constructor to initialize to the data member of the class when an object of the class is created. When the object is created, we should give the value for that particular data, value for that particular attribute of the object. In the Python, init method is used or called as a constructor, and it always called when the object is created. Whenever we are creating the obj is equal to class, at this particular instant, object init function will be called. How? Syntax for init function: define, as it is a method, we should use a function keyword def, because we are defining the method. So with the self parameters, default parameters we have to give, and we have to give the body of the constructor with a self dot attribute name and then the functions or the methods that follows in that particular class. Then type of the constructor, we have two type of the constructor, default constructor and the parameterized constructor. Let's see what is default constructor. Default constructor is a simple constructor which does not accept any argument. We cannot pass any parameter during the default constructor. Its definition has only one argument which is referring to the instance being constructed. Only defaultly it will take self as an argument. When it comes to the parameterized constructor, constructor with the parameter is known as a parameterized constructors. The parameterized constructors takes its first argument as a reference to the instance being constructed known as a self. Whatever the first argument is there, that will be a default argument when we are saying with the parameterized constructor, and the remaining values or remaining attributes will be the data for that particular instant. The rest of the arguments are provided by the programmer. The value for the rest of the arguments will be provided by the programmer during the execution time. So let us see the example for default constructor. We have a class FGC. In that, what we have creating one constructor, that is a default constructor without any parameters. Their self.va is B.Ca. What is this self.va? This is an attribute of that particular constructor. Okay, then we have a method print va. What is the statements within the print va? We are printing that particular attribute. This attribute we are trying to print. So we are creating the object of this class FGC. Yes, once we have created that object, we have to call the methods of that object using the dot operator. Object dot print va. When we call print va, it will go to this function. What it will print? It will print self.va. So what will be the output? Output will be hello B.Ca will be your output. Okay, this is for default constructor. Let's see the example for the parameterized constructor. Here what we have, three different variables we have, that is first, second and the answer. So what we are doing, we are creating the class called addition for initializing one constructor, init constructor. This is a default parameter. The first argument will be considered as a default parameter in the parameterized constructor, and remaining two attributes will be given with the value by the programmer, right? This is a first and second. First and second what we have, right? To access first, self.first. To access the second, we have using self.second is equal to yes. Now what we have a one method called a display. What is that display? What it is displaying? It is displaying what is the value of first, what is the value of second, and what is the answer after the addition. That is what it is displaying. Print first number is equal to string dot self dot first. We are accessing the first, and second number is equal to self dot second. We are accessing the second attribute, and addition of two number is equal to what? Answer. Self dot answer. Addition of two number is equal to self dot. This will be displayed. Next, creating the calculation. We have to calculate. We have to find the answer. No, addition of two numbers. We have to find the answer. So what we are doing? Answer is equal to first plus second. Whenever you are using these attributes, first, second, and then the answer, we should use with the help of self, right? Self dot answer is equal to self dot first, self dot second. So answer will be stored in the self dot answer, and that will be printed in the display function, right? Then create the object of this particular class. What is a class name? Addition is a class name. So I am creating the object one of the class addition. What parameter we are passing? We are passing two parameters, that is F and S, first and second. So 1000 will be the first parameter and 2000 will be the second parameter. So we are giving the value to the particular parameter has been passed to the constructor. So that's what given by the programmer. So now we are creating one more object, addition 10 and 20. This is F and this is S. So when we are called the function calculate with respect to object 1, what it should take? It should calculate answer is equal to first plus second. With respect to which object we are calculating? With respect to the first object. What is the F and S value? Answer is equal to 1000 plus 2000. What is the answer? That is 3000. Yes, with respect to the first object. Now I am calling the calculate function with respect to the second object. When we are creating the second object, what is F and S value? F and S value is 10 plus 20. So what the answer should be? 30. Right. So how to display this answer? We have calculated, but we have not yet displayed that answer. To display that answer, what we have to call? We have to call the display function with respect to object 1 and with respect to object 2. Whenever we call the display function with respect to object 1, output will be the first element or the first number is equal to 1000 and second number is 2000 and the answer is 3000. It will display the output like this with respect to the object 1. When we call with respect to the object 2, it will display first function as 10, first number as 10, second number as 20 and answer as 30. Okay, this is what example for parameterized constructor. The main point is that we are passing the value of the parameter as when we are creating the object. That is a main point here. Object as an argument. Next topic. In object-oriented programming, you can pass the object as argument to the functions or the methods. By doing so, we can perform the operation on the attributes and the behavior of the object within the function. What we are doing? We are performing on the attribute and the behavior with passing the object as a parameter. Let us see the example how to pass the object as a parameter. We are taking the same example of rectangle class here, right? We have created one class rectangle where we have a width and height as a parameter apart from the default parameter. So we are calling self.width, self.height as a height. We are calculating the area. Right, area of rectangle. So now we have to print the rectangle area, right? What we have to print? We have created one function called or method called print rectangle area. Here we have to pass one value, right? We have to pass one value. How we are passing that value? Within this function, we are giving the rectangle dot area, calculate the area and store that in a particular variable called area. Then print the rectangle and call this variable as a area where because we have stored that into the area. Creating the object of the rectangle class. While creating the object, it will call the init function and will be passing the parameter value 4 and 5. Calling the functions with the object as an argument. This is a regular way how we call the function. And print rectangle area, this is a value what we are supposed to pass as a parameter. Here we have created one object of the rectangle class. This object is passed as a parameter to this function rectangle area. This function. We can create this. So in place of rectangle, it will take what is the value sent by rectangle, that is 4 and 5 will be taken as values for the rectangle and the area will be computed. So this is how we can pass the object as a parameter to any function within the class. Object as a return value. Object can be used as a return value. What is return value? After computing something, the value has to be written back to the main memory or the main program. So object can also be treated as return value. The object-oriented programming functions or the method can also returns the object as they returns the value. Similar way as they returns the value, it can be object can also be written. These allow you to perform the operation on objects and return the resulting object as an output of the function. What we are getting as output of the function? We are getting the output of the function as an object itself. So let's see the example how we can return the object as a function. Here same rectangle class. This already we know. Area we have to compute width into height. Creating the one length means creating the square. Square also need what? Square also need length and height of the same value. So then it will be on a square. So define creating the square side length. Only one parameter we are passing, that is a side length. What is the statement in that? We have to compute the square. Square is equal to rectangle side length, and the side length both values should be same, 4 and 4. If the value is 4 and 4, it will create the square and return the square. What we are returning? We are returning the square. Now I am creating what? Object my square. Create the square phi. Here phi is given. In place of this, phi is given, right? So this is how we are returning the particular value or the particular object as a return value. So when we are accessing it, or the accessing methods or the function, what we are doing? We are calling the object with dot operator. What is a width? Width is a phi. And what is the height? Height is a phi. We are calling the square root function where we have passed the object value as square dot area, my square dot area, calling the function area, which gives the output as 25. What is the area of the square? 5 into 5, that is 25. That's how we are passing this particular object, square object, as a return value. What we are returning? We are returning the square as a return value. This is all about object as a return value. This is all about classes and the object and different types of constructor, and how we can use the object as a parameter, object as a return value, and we can create a multiple object of the same class. Thank you.